have another couple.
The official name of, everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The official name of this panel, as you can see, is Risks and Rewards for Emerging Technologies. Informally, this is really just going to be a conversation between four people who deal a lot with emerging technology and boards and companies and sharing strategies and thoughts on emerging technologies. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise a hand, and we'd be happy to take them as well. I'm just going to quickly, we'll go down the line, everybody just introduce themselves quickly, and then we'll jump into the first question, and we'll see how many questions we get to in the time that we have. As I said before, my name is Nathan Renov. I'm a special counsel and a patent attorney in Pillsbury's New York office. My practice deals with everything from two guys in a garage, like the original startup, to multinational companies, advising all areas of intellectual property, and also dealing with people who in companies that invest in those companies, advising them on IP matters and IP strategy.
Hey everybody, my name is Ben Mass, and I'm the founder and CEO of Boom ID. We're the biometric identity authorization platform. And I apologize, I'm getting over a little cold, so my voice is hoarse. And I'm also the guy that's hitting up most of the family offices looking for capital. So, sorry, they asked me to make sure there's no dead time here, so I'll make sure of that.
Barry Thompson. I was an advisor and now a partner with Endeavor. But prior to that, I built startups, worked on Wall Street for a while. Related to change here, probably I was a board member of the Exponential Foundation for 20 years. Even the Russian volunteer system, I was treasurer for 19 of those. But basically, I built companies, advised companies. I've had over 43 startups in my portfolio, and I'm seeing the rate of change.
And I'm Ron Fleming. I am in charge of the startup practice at Pillsbury. I've been doing startups in New York City since the entire ecosystem could have fit at those two tables, maybe less. It's been a joy of a career to watch it grow from nothing to becoming the most vibrant part of the whole New York City economy. And nothing more exciting than watching disruption. We go to, as part of our relationship with our startups, we go to all their board meetings as part of the relationship. Make sure the minutes are taken right, equity is issued correctly, keep our ears attuned to things that are happening. I'm also on the Pillsbury board, and watching as the next big things are happening in AI and beyond, and it'll be fun to watch that propel what's going to happen over the next several decades. So, really good.
Okay, I'm going to throw out the first question, and we'll just kind of go down the line and share their thoughts. First question. Emerging technologies like AI and blockchain have the potential to reshape industries affecting corporate strategy, risk management, stakeholder relationships, and compliance. What framework should boards adopt when navigating these transformative technologies? Maybe Ron on that.
Sure, I'll start. So, from a legalistic perspective, right? No bigger issue than basic rules of duties of care of the director. That's the primary framework that, from a legal perspective, that directors make sure that they achieve as board members. And that duty of care goes to things like diligence and loyalty. And given the potential for disruption, that technology at a pace that I still don't think most people understand, that in a given morning, we have more innovation happening than happened the entire century before Tel was born. That's what's happening every day, and that power is both, of course, an opportunity and a risk. And ensuring that you look at innovation, and I was the first. Sometimes it can be a rebel without a cause. I was the first lawyer at this firm to insist on taking my telex off my business card and putting my email on it. Now, in 1997, that was the thing that actually got me called to the principal's office, i.e. the chairman, when they heard whoever handed out the business card back in the day, said some associates trying to take the telex off the business card. And I had done a little bit of research. And I said, John, I actually never even seen a telex. And we haven't had a machine in 10 years. Because, okay, you can do that. But that risk is everywhere in life, right? Like, it sounds funny, it's a real story. And, sophisticated folks, and we're pretty proud here that, and just for fun, the first mass-marketed consumer technology device. That was our biggest client for probably 80 years. Any quick guesses? The first mass-marketed consumer technology device in the history of humanity. Way before that. Way before that. That was close. We took that to the grave too. What's that?
Morse code.
Sewing machine. Singer. Which then took that to become a big corporate, really one of the first industrial conglomerates. So it's in every industry imaginable. But anyway, for fun. So that's high level how we think about frameworks and making sure that every board meeting, which we do at Pillsbury, we devote always a session to innovation, embracing innovation, and everyone's eye is directly each day, every day on the eye.
The rate of change is influencing the board at every level. You all know Moore's Law. A lot of you know Ray Kurzweil and singularity. The exponential acceleration of technology that we're seeing everywhere. The hype cycle, Gartner hype cycle, we had networks were going to change the world in the late 80s and early 90s. And then that trough of disillusionment, which were the entire 90s. And all of a sudden, we had networking everywhere. And what it did was shift the curve of what's possible, the productivity of each person in the company. With AI, the hype cycle is 30 months at best, maybe less, between the time when massive investments going in but no yield, and then all of a sudden it's yielding. And what it's doing is radically shifting the curve. And that's just one technology. The same is happening in medicine with mRNA and other markets. But with regard to that, the coefficient of productivity of each employee is drastically changed. That means you're going to have less middle managers. That means you're going to have a lot less junior hires. And those junior hires have to be outliers to actually become the senior management of the company over time. That whole process of successional planning changes. The whole process of board governance changes. For instance, right now on a board, you've got a critical KPI in a board meeting. It takes a month before they come back and give you that KPI. One of my portfolio companies today has a really smart AI kit. Literally, in the middle of a board meeting, we came up with a KPI on the computer. Within 2 minutes, they had done a data mining of the entire metadata architecture and delivered that KPI over time with a time series analysis. The expectations of what a board has for how a management team works and what the plan for that company looks like is shifting, just like the curve. The productivity of each person goes up, but your expectations and the way you govern the company will also shift.
I'm going to echo something, Barry, that you said. You've actually teaching up very nicely here. Is something that I use internally, a concept for innovation, and it has to be mission-driven innovation. Innovation for innovation's self can be good, but generally, if we're going to be looking at a disruptive technology, we're going to be looking at something new. Is there a mission for it, or is it something that's more of an academic exercise? And when we're looking at the hype cycle as well, especially when people get excited about a technology, do they understand what the technology is? Do they understand what the applications are? Are they getting caught up in it because their friends are getting caught up in it? And that's something that, as an entrepreneur, I deal with quite a bit, especially with investors. And being in the biometric and AI business, investors call me up, spend half my day on the phone with, hey, could we do this? Hey, what about that? What about this technology? What about that competitor? And it's very important to stay focused on what the mission of the technology is and what you want to use it for. And I'd say also on top of that is, just if you look at innovation, look at the space program. All right, or even look at Thomas Edison building the light bulb. The story of took him 10,000 tries to build a light bulb, and somebody said, you didn't get discouraged? He said, you kidding me? I learned 9,999 things that didn't work. So what are the ancillaries that are coming out of this? You mentioned workforce reduction. Well, great work. My God, that's workforce reduction. That's a cataclysmic shift in how we do business. Where else can we innovate off of that? So if we look at the core innovation and look at all the ancillary innovations, there's opportunities everywhere, and it's the job of the entrepreneur, it's the job of the investors to team up and say, where's the white space, where's the opportunity, and are we spending finite cycles and resources on exercises that are going to bear fruit, or are we doing things that are purely academic exercises, which may not be wrong or bad, but it's important to make that distinction and focus in those areas. And I'm tying this up, speaking to investors, speaking to boards, and speaking to people in any given Saturday in my synagogue is always, why are you asking me the question? Why are we discussing this? Is there a reason, or is it that you think it's cool? And then let's start with that, and then we can have a more intelligent conversation.
I would just add that one of the things that I see the best emerging technology companies doing is they are focused on a goal, but they are also keeping their eyes open for opportunities to expand or to pivot when necessary. I'll give a great example of this. A client of ours called UVI is a technology out of Israel, started by two guys out of one of the defense groups that developed technology that scanned the bottom of cars as you drove over them to look for IEDs, bombs, things like that. They were basically targeting the defense industry, and they were setting up at every mall by the parking lot so that they could scan the cars as they go in and make sure that they were safe. But it proved to be, the technology was extremely impressive, but it proved to be challenging from a business perspective because dealing with defense contractors, dealing with a lot of bureaucracy was challenging for them. They ultimately had the foresight to pivot, and now they are working with insurance companies, with car rental companies, with car and auto manufacturers. So if a car comes, leaves a lot, they drive it through, they scan the bottom, and by the way, the technology evolved as well. So now they have like a full, like an arc that you drive through. It scans the entire outside of the body using AI, and now they know what the car looked like when it left the lot, and then when it comes back, you don't have some guy walking around, marking off a little paper. They have a full scan. They know exactly that you return the car the way that it came, or if it's manufacturing, and the credit really goes to the CEO who had the presence of mind to keep a pulse of where his industry was going, and more importantly, how he could take that technology and expand it into other areas that he hadn't initially thought of, and being brave enough to actually take that step and move into other sectors. Now they're doing excellent. So
If I can just say something on that, that's also so important, is when you look at the technology, is don't get caught up and fall in love with the technology as much as focus on what it does and what it means to the customer and what it means to the audience. I'm going, personal discovery here, just using it as an example. You start off in startup land with a great technology, and you start off with academics who fall in love with what they're building. And at some point, you have to switch to an athletic model to say, all right, great, what does it mean to who's buying it? Why are they buying it? And all of those questions, and why are people using it? Because otherwise, again, you get caught up in a great technology, but if you're not focusing on the application, it's an academic exercise.
all right, move to the next question. When faced with the choice between established, tried and tested technologies and emerging innovations, what are the key risks and rewards for companies choosing to move away from industry standard solutions?
Okay, so here's the best way to think about this. So, hard to believe that when I started here, there was no software that existed to compare two drafts of documents. So literally, paralegals, first and second year associates, I'd come home with my hands red from red markers, because you'd sit there with very long documents. I'm not that old, right? Sitting there with very long documents, my hands in rulers, doing what you now do with the press of a button since the mid-90s, right? But that was it given, right? So go back 3 decades, the three biggest uses of law firm space was we had a 3,000 square foot library, staffed with 20 professionals, a 3,000 3,000 square, my favorite, 3,000 square foot place, typing pools, proofreaders, and redliners, right? Fast forwarded between 1991 and 2001, when a bunch of people would come around and say, well, Ron.com, what are you going to do now? And I said, are you kidding me? We haven't seen anything yet, right? That dynamic had changed so that even in a short decade, all those jobs disappeared and became better ones, right? So we went from having 18 librarian types to one, who basically retrieved stuff off the internet from folks that hadn't figured out what the World Wide Web was in 2001. We went from 50 paralegals to 3, and the whole typing, proofreading, red line disappeared, right? Didn't need it anymore. Technology had bypassed that. And I mean, so when you look at those kind of dynamics, it becomes one's job to really have forward-looking, that the point of this is future-proofing the board, but making sure that around the table, the key decision makers aren't just looking backwards, but are constantly looking at the next things that are out there. And again, and really having their heads down in ways that allow us and to be more competitive, to do things better, faster, more accurately, and more efficiently, and focusing on adding value. And that whole drumbeat of what's happened over the course of my career, of allowing us to be more efficient and add a lot more high value call it counseling. And I think we'll continue to see technology enable us to all be better. To use the analogy, better athletes because of all the wondrous things and all call it the drudgery that one gets to lose because of this innovative pace. We all have in our hands all the knowledge and history of humankind on demand, mostly for free in our pockets. And we get really upset when it takes more than a millisecond to get it. So, but this technology sadly is not going to allow us. I'm pretty sure the iPhone 20 is not going to allow us to hit a button and propel us, to the West Coast in 5 minutes. We're hitting the limits here on what this incrementally is going to do, model over model. But this technology now needs to be run in every other industry imaginable. You mentioned healthcare being the biggest part of the economy. It's not a coincidence that so much of what's happening now is happening in things like healthcare and every other, in basic materials, nuclear energy, and all those things. So we're at the beginning. It's really like the top of the first about what's about to happen. And I think we'll never lose sight every day of how blessed we all are to be part of that magic and helping the world be, talking about mission-driven, being a better place and helping people win to achieve unleashing all this innovation.
So I think we buy established products because they have every conceivable feature you know. They've been out there forever. They work. The old adage was you never got fired for buying IBM. Right. And an example right now is probably NetSuite. Most of us have portfolio companies who, oh gosh, we want to move up the accounting chain. We're going to install a mid-tier solution like NetSuite. What's happening with democratization of the technology, with AI, with other things, is those features that took NetSuite 5 years to build, and Oracle another 5 years to monetize the heck out of, can be developed in a week or a month. So when we start at the board level looking at the expenditures of our portfolio companies, what they're spending money on, if they buy NetSuite today, they only ever have NetSuite. If they buy and innovate something like Xero, one of the 6 or 7 new companies that are doing that, the rate of feature development, the rate of change is so high that unless they absolutely must have something, your cost structure, your ability to grow, is all in the new technologies. We do have a compelling reason to be safe. As a governance body, you want to take the safe solution. But balancing that with what will also be static in what is the safe solution today is a crippling disadvantage in 2 years, 3 years. That if you have any risk appetite as an organization, if you're doing anything that's going to change in the business model, it's far better to, right now, given the exponential growth in technology, the democratization of software, to go with something new that has the capability to grow with you than the static product that meets your needs today and everyone says it's safe, but it's going to cripple you tomorrow with the rate of change and the agility you're going to need in the business.
Everybody but that table's banned from answering this question. How many people here know who RSA is? not that many anymore. Time was where they owned 80% of the market of identity. 95.
And all the government.
Right, and all the government contracts. They made those little tokens that changed numbers and whatnot, and then started buying companies, and then a funny thing happened. They didn't just get stable and static, they got stale. And then, then you had the corporate infighting, and you had the bureaucracy, and then you had reasons for not selling product, and the Department of Sales Prevention, which is a running gag. And so it's very important to understand what's tried, true, static, and stable versus what's old and stale. And to be able to understand the difference of companies. You know, look at Microsoft. Microsoft's been around forever. We can all have our grumblings around Microsoft, but God bless them, they stay relevant. And they're the best example of it. And how many in the last 30 years of these tried and true technologies have gone by the wayside and gone to the graveyard of forgotten classics. Now balance that with if you're looking for innovative technology. Something that I forget who said it, but it's actually one of the greatest things I've heard is if you want to find a successful startup, you're going to look at professional failures. Not professional failures, failures. People who are professionals who've been doing this long enough that they know how to fail. A gymnast knows how to fall. An airline pilot knows how to crash the plane successfully. That's what a landing is. Don't kid yourself. They know how to land that plane. So being able to identify technology companies that can be innovative, that can be cool and creative and move like a bat out of hell and have energy and piss and vinegar and all those things we get excited about. But know that they're not going to fall into traps that less experienced startups are going to fall under. That they have a board behind them, they have leadership who understands the mission and who understands, again, how to fail. Because that's a good thing if you know how to fail. Make mistakes, break things, challenge the status quo, but know how to do it in a smart, intelligent way.
And do it fast.
And agility is absolutely important. But it's very important. So how do you balance that? You take, your tried and true, you take good ones, you know how to creatively destroy the ones that are, again, the ones that are stale, but also how to have a healthy mix of good, solid technologies that will be there with you.
Yeah, I would just add, anecdotally, AI is obviously the biggest rage right now, and for good reason. And I think the companies that are not willing to take the risks associated with emerging technologies are ultimately going to be left behind. I mean, I could say about Pillsbury, we as a firm, shameless plug if you don't mind, but we as a firm have embraced generative AI from day one. We've got a team of, I would say, 60 or something attorneys from all different areas of the firm. We have an attorney in California. I didn't even know we had this attorney here who works with vineyards, and she deals with all kind of California wine law. And she's on this group that meets every month to talk about different issues that their clients are seeing in integrating generative AI. And working through these things as a group in various different verticals, and we ourselves are integrating the technology in a responsible and cautious way. So we're mitigating the risks associated with it, but we also think that not taking that risk would be even more detrimental ultimately. So there's a balance there.
Well, this is fun. So in preparation for this, I decided it would be fun to go do a thought experiment and look at what the New York Times, my wife actually covered it at Morgan Stanley back in this Europe, to see what the New York Times was saying in 2002 about the internet, which was hardly new in 2002, I think. So we all were online in 2002 in a big way, conducting business regularly. And by the way, that's been one of the surprises of my career, that 20 years later, email is still the killer app. Like, everything else has kind of changed except that in some weird way. Really can't figure that out. I haven't figured that out yet. Look, they did a debt offering in the fall of 2002, and risk factors. They have a risk factor section, and talking about how they're very, focused on, and much of their business is advertising driven, and they're talking about the risks of that business. And they kind of list them in order. And they talk about, well, our biggest risks are other newspapers, broadcast media, the yellow pages. Oh, and the internet was like a throwaway at the end of this litany. So just like AI is smacking us in the face, they're 4 or 5 years into an existential threat to their existence, and it's a throwaway. They're more worried about the yellow pages. I don't think you know what that is, right? You ever seen it? Well, they're not even all these. I guess I don't print them. I don't know, whatever. But just for fun, like, so just because we're all talking about it doesn't mean that there's not. And I can't help it. You mentioned Moore's law, and we have to figure out whether we're going to take it off our website. But we've been bragging about forming Intel in 1968 for the last 50 years because that was our business model. They came to us and we incorporated Intel. We did all the venture rounds. We took them public. We did yada yada yada. And who could have guessed that the CEO of NVIDIA's net worth is greater than the market cap of Intel? NVIDIA is now, what is it? Is it 50 Intels? They have the math right. I didn't check the stock price today, but I think it's 50 Intels NVIDIA is. Because they missed mobility. They missed AI. Right there. By the way, as recently as 3 years ago, they had the same market cap. Now it's 50 times. So anyway, even the biggest companies in the world, we talk about Intel. I still remember when Intel Inside was a thing. Right? That's how you bought computers. You wanted everybody. All you knew is you wanted Intel. You wanted the Pentium chips in your computer.
Maybe we'll do one more question, and then there was a question in the crowd. We'll get to right after. I like this question. I'm curious to see what everybody has to say about it. Pretty simple question, actually. When investors are conducting due diligence on a company that is raising funds, what key factors should they focus on, particularly in the context of emerging technologies?
A little self-serving, but
That's okay.
quality of the suit. So I actually, as an investee, I did ask that question quite a bit. And as one of my heroes in the audience, Sari, likes to say, it's the quality of the team and the pig-headed determination. Will they ever give up? If you're looking at the technology, is there a purpose for it? Is it a feature or is it a product? Personally, I love buying startups off the scrap heap for cashless transactions that built great features that never made a product. It's just a feature, and they tried to build a business around a feature. So it's so important is, do they have a business? Is it a business? Is there a mission? Is there a market? Is the team experienced? Again, do they know how to fail? And is your money going, not just in a safe bet technology, but a safe bet team? I know that sounds so cliche, but it is what it all boils down to, right?
I think in addition to that, because that's the foundation, it's kind of like what Peter was saying earlier. He's got different spokes in the tire with the rim around the outside, right? As you're coming to the market, if you have a product that is one-dimensional, where does revenue come from when that product is cannibalized by 1,000 entrants into that market segment? Exaggerating for a fact. If you have other spokes, if you have adjacent revenue that you can drive to round out that process so you can cannibalize that core revenue base as the market changes, so you aren't a one-pillar wonder. Now you have a sustainable entity that actually can get through pivots, market transformations. Heck, half the data analytics companies that didn't participate in market or in the AI stuff are gone. And it'll all work itself out. Those startups have to repivot. Those founders have gone, and now they're AI religious converts. But you've got to have adjacent revenues from the core product that you can monetize while you continue to innovate and cannibalize that core base. Because the rate of continuous innovation is going up. And you can't rely on a product or technology. It is what value are you providing to the customer, and can you provide adjacent value to that from that first customer so that you broaden the revenue from every person you engage so you don't have to continually acquire more customers.
So I'll a couple of points here. So more from the legal perspective, right, as opposed to the commercial. Almost as comical, but really basic issues as does the company own its own IP in the first place? So we're talking about technology, but the number of times everything when you see a startup and there is a wonky structure where the innovators held on to the technology in a separate legal entity. So if things don't work out, the investors get hosed and they keep the technology, whatever. So really, all the items that Nathan does for a living as an IP lawyer around ownership of the IP. Oh, by the way, we're in a universe now where everyone has side hustles. Were they at someplace else where they had a legal document that said everything that they created, on the company's premises is owned by the company and not by them. So all those kind of issues, which you could be assured, when we meet new entrepreneurs that we're working with for the first time, we go through that drill and say, guess what? You're going to be going through this every round of capital. When you get to the exit you're working hard to get to, an IPO or a sale, people are going to be asking these same questions. So we go out of our way to make sure to memorialize all that hard work you do up front on understanding all those ownership dynamics, about whether making sure the company even owns the technology that investors are purporting to invest in. You hear people talk all the time about what is the business model. And I guess one thing that I've kind of heard over and over again, and the blockchain, look, 3 or 4 years ago, all anybody wanted to talk about was the blockchain. And it became pretty clear, within a year, a couple of years ago, it was very different from the internet, right? Like, by 2001 to 2002, it was clear that there were a lot of, it was working, that people, there were viable businesses that were happy that the internet was changing everything. After a couple of years of blockchain, I think, when all the dust is settled, people look at it. Obviously, there's been innovation around it, fintech and beyond, but a lot of more hype than maybe substance. I guess we'll see what happens with the metaverse and all that good stuff. But and here we are with AI. So we'll continue to see these new topics emerge. But ownership, and on the legal side, getting one's arms around, making sure that somebody actually owns what it purports to.
Yeah, I would just add to that on when you're talking about IP. Every time I help diligence a company from an IP perspective, there's 2 aspects of it. There's the IP itself, and then there's the business around the IP. Companies like Facebook and Uber, when they started, didn't really have any IP to speak of at all. What they had was a really good business model, and they were first to market. I mean, MySpace and Facebook kind of just competed, and MySpace had and Facebook had a better product, and that's why they are what they are. And MySpace, I don't know if it has enough MySpace anymore. But they've since developed massive IP portfolios because they understood that there's those 2 aspects. There's the business part of it, and then there's protecting that business with your intellectual property, making sure that you take a holistic approach, that you're not just spending hundreds of thousands of dollars filing patents on aspects of your system that aren't really a core part of your business, that you're have the right founders agreements so that somebody doesn't walk away with the technology, assignment documents so that your inventors are assigning their technology, especially in the context of universities. A lot of tech, especially in the biotech space, is coming out of labs that are associated with universities. Universities sometimes have very onerous agreements with their PhDs and the people working there and developing technologies, and sometimes it's shocking to see how little they actually own when they leave. So taking a holistic approach, terms of use, terms of conditions, making sure that anybody who's accessing your platform is doing it under those terms, so that you're not just accessing your platform and taking your IP, things that aren't necessarily protectable with patents, so trade secret related, trademarks, all of those things are a key aspect. And when you're due diligencing a company, you should be thinking about all of these things. Maybe working with an IP attorney who can help you make sure that you are looking at all these things, but in all seriousness, making sure that you've checked those boxes, because if you don't, you're as my father always says when he's doing an investment, first question is, what's your valuation? The second question is, what's your, how are you protecting my investment, i.e., what's your intellectual property? And the third question is, have you spoken to my son Nathan yet? So With that, there's one question, and we'll take one from the crowd, and then.
Yeah. So I'm an innovator and entrepreneur, technology guy. You guys are talking a lot on the hype of AI. Isn't it just a tool, just like any of the other things? You mentioned blockchain, that's just a ledger. I mean, the use of it is exclusively for the company and for creating and build, not just to jump on the hype wave, correct?
Can I talk to that? So, like any other technology, all it does is shift the curve, right? It shifts the curve of what's possible. Now, with a team of 2 people, I can do what took a team of 12 in 6 months versus 2 people in 5 months. It's just a tool. It allows that human team to shift the curve of the productivity they have for their input capital, for input labor. No different than networking. When you had networks and you could communicate, all of a sudden there's a whole new raft of things that were possible, but it's just because you had a tool that allowed it to happen. So the thing with AI, and where the hype comes in, and we're disillusioned with it right now, is that it was supposed to make decisions and think for us. It's not. But what it does do is collate data and give us access to large amounts of information in a precise way, or take our vision of things and take the bullet points of our idea and write a brief, or take the drawings we have of software and create code, albeit code still sucks, but in a couple of years it'll be done. It just is shifting what is possible, not changing what a human does per se. They're just making the human far more efficient at it, and they can radically increase the scope of what they can do in a given period of time. That's my use.
And also, again, back to mission. What are you doing with it? 2 quick questions for the audience. A, how confident on an individual level are you that you know what AI is? But the better question is, how confident are that we all have a common definition in this room of what AI is? Right. 100%. Yep.
So
We all kind of know what it is. We all, yes?
Really, it's machine learning. It's not AI. And it's been around for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
He's working on it in the 80s.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what I'm trying to point out is that everybody's working on these hype cycles when we know that AI, machine learning, is still flawed because the original data that was put in that everybody's using is incorrect. And so because it's incorrect, you're basing these pieces where you're expecting an accurate answer, and maybe an accurate answer, but it's maybe not. And how do you determine that?
I
And the
think
programmer happens to be a human.
exactly. And
So that's
this is why you're going to have generational issues. And I'm trying to figure out a way to say this in the proper, socially appropriate way. Gen X, maybe some millennials, they did the low-level stuff and do the high-level stuff. So interacting with AI, they can cyborg and radically increase their productivity because they have the right knowledge, they've got the experience to vet the inputs and outputs of that learning. And over time, yeah, the base data will get better and whatever, but today, to be efficient, it's those folks who've got the breadth of experience that can most leverage it if they choose to engage with it. A lot of them won't. Where you run into a lot of problems with the technology, as you said, garbage in, garbage out. You get your recent college graduates who don't know anything about anything. And they're using what comes back of it as if it was delivered by God. And there's no critical thinking. There's no validation. There's no rational thought process, nor are they asking for the right things. They haven't written the brief before, so they're just saying write a brief, instead of giving them the 14 bullet points that need to be in the brief so it can accelerate what they do. And there's going to be a lot of generational challenges with this, because what you're saying is exactly spot on. That those who have the breadth of wisdom, it's going to radically increase their productivity. Those that don't, it's going to make them run off a cliff at 100 miles an hour, Wile E. Coyote style.
Right. I would just say this. I think Sophocles was worried thousands of years ago that the invention of paper was going to destroy our brains. And we wouldn't be able to, because up to that point, the prior 20 million years, people had used memories to record this knowledge as opposed to us having them on demand for free, et cetera. So that's an email question. People said when I lost my red hands to the compare my software in 1993, where I could press a button and get a red line, how would the tailors of the next generation ever learn without being, sitting there with the masters and watching how they marked up documents to understand changes and how to think like a lawyer? And it'll turn out to be nonsense, right? We'll figure it out. People will learn. That's the innovative. That's the history of the show.
I have a question. Actually, I'm going to add a question to the two questions that you mentioned today, which is, if it's a tool, how do you use that tool? And to better understand how we can actually learn how to use AI, I want to ask a question to Nathan and Ron, since you're partners of a law firm which is very engaged in innovation. You mentioned that you spend a lot of time and making substantial investments in allowing your associates to learn how to use the technology. Which are the strategies from a practical point of view that you have put in place in your law firm to allow your new hire associates to engage with the AI technology, start using the technology, and then how do you verify or supervisar, okay? You review the work that is being done by your associates. Using AI is work that legally is the advice that your clients are paying you as a firm to provide as experts on the subject matter.
I'll take a part of that, please. On the first part, as far as using AI as a tool, my daughter is in her second year of college, and she's doing computer programming, and her teachers, thankfully, are encouraging their students to use generative AI as a tool for developing software, as opposed to many people in the industry who are just panicking that that AI is going to write them out of a job, essentially. And when we, as a firm, initially had conversations a couple years ago already about integrating AI, I think there was a similar sense of I would say, concern among some attorneys that, what's going to happen, you're going to bring in this tool, and then it's going to make, it's going to lower billable hours because people are going to be more efficient, are going to get things done faster, and then you can't bill, and then it's going to be taking our jobs from us, and we're going to have to let people go. But as a firm, we took the approach of, no, if we embrace that technology, everybody benefits from it. If we get it through a job, through an assignment faster, that just means that you have more time to work on the next assignment that you're working on. If you're using these tools in a responsible way, and we can talk about what protocols are in place to make sure that happens, but rather than just either people being too afraid to even touch it or not having any idea what it is, like you said, when we had a first call about it, I remember one person said, "Oh yeah, it's Google on steroids," and the people who knew what generative AI was were all like, "No, it's not. You don't go to generative AI. You don't go to ChatGPT to get factual answers. If you do that, you might end up with the problem that a lot of people have: the hallucinations, or in the case of attorneys being sanctioned for having cases literally being made up by the AI. Beautiful sounding citations, cases that proved exactly the point that you wanted to have, but were actually fictitious, didn't exist at all, and people getting sanctioned for it. So there's a responsible way to integrate it as a tool where both the attorneys and our clients are benefiting from it. Maybe Ron, you want to talk about what
we again, balancing the need to be forward and innovation, but at the same time being cautious. Again, as we all know, you can't just roll. If you go out to the public versions of ChatGPT, lawyers can't do that. We'll be uploading client confidences in ways that have major ethical problems. So we have rolled out a commercial version, the commercial version, and we know that people use it without going through the extensive training program that goes along with it.
Who handles the training? You retain a third party to hire IT people that takes care of the training. You hire e-learning, practical solutions that comes and teach your attorneys how to use AI. How does it work from a practical point of view?
Well,
Because your example as a firm cannot be applied to any type of business.
yeah, I mean, we do actually all of those things. We have third parties that have come in for doing training and for monitoring, and we've had extensive sandbox usage within the firm, testing not just outside, not just protecting client information from going outside, but even cross-contamination amongst clients internally. So making sure that if I'm working on something, on some innovation, that it's not going to feed into somebody else's, or even within the firm. So we have, from the risk perspective, we're lawyers. Our whole job is to mitigate risk, but at the same time, the best way to be able to integrate this is by doing it in a responsible way while keeping pushing forward, with the tool.
And just one quick thing. I promise that I'm done. So you said it's a tool. We also going back about stagnant. In roughly, think about back in the days of MP3 players. We had Diamond Rio, we had Creative Labs, we had Sony. Steve Jobs stands up on stage and just says, "This is 1,000 songs in your pocket," and completely blew the industry up. Once somebody is able to succinctly say what you can use it for, game over.